Mark Wahlberg and Halle Berry have teamed up in an action thriller that will throw their characters into a life-threatening situation. I have to say I was actually looking forward to this movie because I was thinking that we were going to get another action balanced with humour sort of movie. It was also a nice surprise for me because what I do is have a calendar with all the upcoming content on it, and this was literally something that I don't know how, but I missed it, and it popped up on my Netflix alert. So with that being said, should The Union be added to your binge-worthy list? The Union is set in a high-stakes, action-packed world where Mike McKenna finds himself dragged into a dangerous mission despite his lack of expertise. The setting is a mix of gritty urban environments and tense underground dealings, with the film emphasising danger, tension, and personal stakes. The main conflict involves Mike and Roxanne going up against powerful forces in a dangerous world and pushing themselves to their limits. As they dive deeper into the danger, their lack of trust and unresolved tension adds layers of internal and external challenges. Mike and Roxanne overcome their personal differences and the powerful forces they're up against. Although their journey is full of tension and distrust, they find a way to work together to survive. The climactic moments highlight their growing understanding and partnership as they navigate the dangerous criminal underworld. We're getting roughly an hour and 45 minutes for this movie, so it hits the average duration mark. The most memorable moment for me with this movie has to be the opening sequence, because we find our heroes in the field of battle. They're on a mission. We're already exposed to the danger, the threat, and it automatically exposes us to the tone of this movie, which enables that intrigue. Imagine the opening of a movie that's calm, but then you soon come to realise that the characters that are communicating with one another are setting up to execute on a mission, which takes you directly into the kickoff to the action. The twist here is that you go from thinking that the agents that are associated to the Union go from being in control to being put on the back foot, which sets the tone for the mystery of the movie. Soon after, we're being introduced to Mike, who's being brought into the fold and tasked with supporting the Union to conclude their mission on recovering the intelligence and uncovering the secrets as to who's behind the suspected betrayal. Now, the opening sequence did satisfy my expectations for the movie, but then introduced Mike. His involvement in the story is a little bit questionable, and this is where the story starts to fall short. It definitely made me a little bit confused because Mike, being a construction worker, becoming a secret agent in a very limited space of time. Now, for me, the movie does have a standout questionable moment, and it's all revolving around Mike. This construction worker might have ties to Roxanne, but because of the outcome to the opening sequence, it still doesn't justify why Mike's involved. Now, the movie does touch upon why he has been chosen, but at the same time, they only touch upon it. They don't really go into that much detail. They almost glaze upon it, which makes it a little bit lackluster. And the consequence of that, for me, is that this is where the story sort of falls short. The other thing is that even though he's been chosen, he has 6 months of training that is crammed into 2 weeks. And the outcome to that is that he is already geared up to be able to take on the responsibility and accountability that the role of an agent bears upon him. These issues in this particular moment in the movie is what I would call the D hook. There's a heavy dip in what is trying to drive intrigue because it starts to make things very unrealistic. Now, I know this movie is not meant to be portraying some sort of realism and truth, but at the same time, the guy has literally crammed in 6 months of training into 2 weeks, and then the outcome is that he is able to be a secret agent. I mean, come on. I also think that the expectation that this movie has before you watch it is that it's an action movie that's going to couple with some sort of humorous element, and because of the imbalance of the humorous element into this movie, when it's scaling more towards it being more action driven, the involvement of Mike and how he is being involved and recruited is where the movie starts to fall short. Now, this movie stars Halle Berry as Roxanne, Mark Wahlberg as Mike McKenna, Dana Denali as Nicole, Jessica DeGo as Juliet Nightingale, Mike Coulter as Nick Faraday, and J.K. Simmons as Tom Brennan. Now, who are the ones to watch in The Union? As always, we need our choices for the ones to watch. And the ones to watch for me are Roxanne, Mike, and Tom. Now, who is the one to watch out of the ones to watch? For me, the chosen one to watch was a very difficult decision because I was torn between Roxanne and Mike. But the chosen one to watch for me has to be Mike. Mike's character arc could be described as a little bit predictable. In the beginning, Mike is stuck in his ways, and it's being described in the movie by Roxanne herself that everyone around him seems to realise his potential. He is the only one that doesn't. By the end of the movie, he fulfills that potential and becomes the man that he is meant to be. The key moment for Mike in this movie that sort of solidifies your thinking of him involves Roxanne, who practically knows him his whole life. She calls him out on being the one person that doesn't actually realise his potential. Mike removes himself from the situation, walking away from Roxanne and walking away from the union, digesting the fact that he's been called out on something major whilst also having some time for self-reflection. Given the movie's fast pacing, Mike's turnaround time is very quick as we see him return and swallow what Roxanne has called him out on, wanting to see things through and finally live up to his potential. Mike's arc does feel like an obvious one, but this particular situation within the story feels like the catalyst for change, which makes his character come across as compelling. Now, Roxanne is a laser-focused individual. She's working as a secret agent for the Union Agency. Now, she does have to go through a lot of challenges in this movie, but her main challenge is all centered around the main story, which is the fact that she has to retrieve a bionicle weapon that poses a major threat on a global scale. Roxanne, being someone that tries to keep her emotions in check, has to overcome some heavy emotional obstacles. As we move through the story, it's interesting to see how spending time with Mike begins to soften her, and the same is seen for Roxanne having the same effect on Mike, causing him to toughen up. As entertaining as it was to see Roxanne's character arc develop, I think there could have been more development threaded throughout. As entertaining as it was to see Roxanne's character arc develop, I think there could have been more development threaded throughout the story to heighten the connection for us with her character. Now, everyone loves a bit of J.K. Simmons, and he brought that similarly serious portrayal in Tom Brennan. Tom is a serious man in a serious role as the head of the Union. His main challenge is the same as Roxanne's, but the difference here is that Tom actually has to deal with the CIA. Every time he's in the operating room, being Overwatch, he has to deal with the CIA every single time. Tom constantly shows his resilience to their presence, but not letting it change his usual pattern of decision making, showing that he backs himself. Now, I've always enjoyed the acting from J.K. Simmons, but in this movie I was kind of hoping that I would witness a little bit more humour from him. I mean, not taking anything away from his acting in this movie, but I do think that this could have really added to his performance, making the story a little bit more entertaining to watch. One of the standout visual moments in the Union has to be the dramatic rooftop chase scene. Now, the city skyline stands out against all the action because the lead agent is leaping from building to building, with the camera capturing wide sweeping shots. In the scene where the agent finally confronts the Union in an abandoned warehouse, the dark, shadowy lighting and the flickering neon lights outside create a gritty, high-stakes atmosphere. The tension is visually appearing as the camera slowly zooms in on the case containing the bionicle weapon, framed in the middle of the room under a single harsh spotlight. The close-up shots and rapid cuts during the fight scenes heighten the sense of urgency and danger, with the camera following every punch, kick, and weapon discharge. The use of dim lighting and tight spaces in these sequences make you feel the claustrophobia and pressure the agents are facing. The visuals play a critical role in the final showdown, where the bright flashes of explosions bring the final battle to life. The framing of the moment when the case is finally secured, surrounded by the destruction, gives you a sense of relief and closure. The visuals in the Union really amplify the story, bringing you both that emotional and tension side to the movie. While there are some really good elements in there that are sleek when it comes to supporting the action for the storyline, there isn't really that sense of something new that's been brought into the action arena. And that left me with a mixture of feelings, being both satisfied and having that moment of, well, was that it? Compared to other action thrillers, The Union was okay. It wasn't something that I regret watching, but it isn't something that I go out my way for watching again. I was expecting better when I had my expectations on something being both action, thriller, coupled with a bit of humorous element incorporated into the movie. And I definitely wasn't satisfied with the lackluster explanation as to why Mike was recruited into the Union. And if you add in his 6 months crammed into 2 weeks training, well, that's where the movie practically lost me. The movie wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't the worst. It's definitely not something that I'm going to add to my shortlist if I'm struggling to find something to watch. Overall, I found The Union to be an okay watch. I thought the plot and storyline opened up well in setting the scene, but I didn't really think that it aligned to my expectations when you're balancing the humour and action and thriller. I also thought that the plot hole surrounding Mike is where it took a heavy dip. I thought the character development was a very interesting one, although we do just really have Roxanne and Mike, but it's interesting because the dynamic at play is where things get entertaining. You see Roxanne being that hard, unemotional individual, and that is coupled with Mike that balances it out. Seeing her at the end become a little bit more softened and having that more decoupled from work and enjoyment in life. Whereas Mike, on the other hand, has that very softened, unmanly type of vibe, and Roxanne helps unleash his potential. I thought the visual and cinematography was great at supporting the movie, but I don't think that it brought anything new or fresh into the genre. And when it comes to the entertainment value, The Union doesn't blow me away necessarily, but I also don't regret watching it. But at the same time, it's not something that's going to be added to my shortlist if I ever find myself in a situation where I'm lacking something to watch. I give The Union a 2 out of 5 buckets, meaning it's a binge watching 50-50. Now, if you've watched the movie or not, what do you think would put someone like Mike in a dangerous situation that he's clearly unqualified for? Is it love, duty, or something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, don't forget to smash a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and follow us on social media to stay up to date with the latest content. If you like what you've seen and you want to see more, click right here to see more. I'm Matthew, this is Binge Watcher. Thanks for binging with me.